What's up, everybody? Metal Dave, along with my co-host Jason McMaster, bringing you another episode of the Talk Louder podcast. Today, we are joined by vocalist Ron Keel. Ron has been around for decades. You all remember him from MTV, the 80s, his band Keel. He had the hit song with The Right to Rock. Before that, he was in Steeler. You remember Steeler very well. Introduced the world to Yngwie Malmsteen. And then later on, Ron kind of reinvented himself and sort of followed his muse, and it led him towards a more southern rock, country western type thing. He kind of reinvented himself as the metal cowboy, and he's got a new album called KEELWORLD, and it encompasses all of those phases of his career, all those different genres of music, but all of the material is brand new. So he basically went back and called up all the guys from his previous bands, as many as he could, got them together to cut new music for this album, KEELWORLD. And it came out August 2nd, and it's just a great sort of retrospect career snapshot of Ron Keel.
I think it's a great idea because he's been around a long time, and he's created a bunch of different. I mean, it's him all the time, but there's these different gears. I feel like or these different colors. There you go, of style, and it's interesting. How would you have this kind of a song and this kind of a song, and I'll have all these different groups of people that I work with, and have them work on material while I'm working on this material. These guys can be working on this material, and I'll just like poke my head in and cut the vocals for that. And next thing you know, he's got KEELWORLD.
Yeah.
And this is something that, I mean, he keeps saying, and this guy's been with me 26 years, and this guy's been with me, 17 years, and blah, we're, add it all up, and it's like his whole life has been KEELWORLD the whole time. And I think that he's fought and worked extremely hard to get he also says, this is relative. He says he's uncomfortable with the vocals on the Steeler record. And you and I professed and confessed that no way, dude. That's what I love about you, is that crazy screechy thing that he probably is trying to say that he does not like, right?
Yeah.
Well, I understand that. I mean,
Sure.
Of course I do. When I listen to early Watchtower shit, I'm like, man, that's just screechy, like honey badger screeching, let's run over some squirrels. That's what it sounds like. And so I get it. I understand. But you know what? That's what, and I'm speaking for you and me, that's what people fall in love with. Something that, whether it's Keel, Cold Day in Hell, Hot on Your Heels, whatever, it could be anything. But that's what resonates and has a memory, kind of like a smell. And I think that's where, even though he's, it's hard to step out personally and see that all the time, even though he does say that he understands what that era of KEELWORLD meant to certain, people. And I'm just glad that he's sort of like keeping all of that alive and and able to go back to the old band pretty much and recreate that and get it to feel and sound like it's like its original idea. And I wanted to say, I didn't want to interrupt the flow of the interview we had with Ron today, which was fantastic. But it's hard to write a song probably about tits and ass when you're 60 than when you're 19. You know what I mean? You're a different human being. You're a different brain. Because if you're not, I can't believe you're still alive.
Yeah. Now you're the creepy guy.
Yeah. So it's kind of, I'm a 60-year-old guy who wrote Sportin' a Woody when he was 22 and have to sing it at 60.
Yeah.
So I'm just laughing at myself the whole time. So I understand that that way, but it's probably hard to get it to. And he's also very forthcoming as far as how cheesy it is and how 80s metal guys always love a little bit of cheese on everything.
Yeah.
So that's completely fair, and he's straight shooter. He's very honest, and I love talking to him today.
Yeah, he's a high energy dude, and he's managed to stay relevant in a number of ways. We didn't even get around to his radio show and his podcast.
So this introduction to Ron's Talk Louder episode today, this is the most I've talked. I get to talk the entire interview.
Yeah.
I get to talk. I get to talk more in the intro than I do the entire interview, and I love that when our guests are very talkative and loudmouth
and when they have that much good to say. I'm the same way. I was telling you off camera earlier. I usually pride myself in doing my homework and coming up with questions that they haven't been asked a million times and this sort of thing. And at some point it occurred to me, it's Ron Keel, man. We're barely going to say hello and he's going to be off to the races, and it's going to be great because he is very passionate about what he does. He has a lot to say. He's got great energy. So when you get someone like that, you let them tell their story, you know? And back to KEELWORLD, for all of you fans out there that have followed Ron through his whole career, you're going to see names on this album. You're going to see Rick Fox is on the Steeler tune. Dwayne Miller, the drummer from Keel, is there. Bobby Rondinelli plays drums on the Black Sabbath cover, Children of the Grave. Neil Murray plays bass. And all you nerds listening to this show, I know you know who those people are. So he did manage to round up a lot of the people from the original lineups as much as possible. So I think that lends it some legitimacy too. It's not just Ron pulling together people under a moniker that had nothing to do with that moniker. Most of the people on this record had a big part to play in that part of his career. So it makes the bands on the album very genuine. It's the real deal. And I think he does a great job with his segue from the metal into the country stuff. I opened the interview by telling him I remember watching him on MTV, and I just thought he had the greatest, ballsiest metal voice.
Well, see, that goes back to what we were just talking about. That when I heard that voice, I was like, yes, that's what I want. Claws on the chalkboard. That's what I want. And I get it. He was just learning his voice. He was still young and still working on it. And he admits that. So I get that. You know, I like how he's tying everything together with KEELWORLD. Yes, as we've said, the Black Sabbath story is very interesting. I want people to watch this episode and pay attention to that because it's an interesting story, and we find out how, the connecting how that came together at all.
Yeah.
And I learned something today, so that's cool. But it also, and an earlier episode, years ago now, we did an episode on the Deep Purple family tree.
Right.
I just want to tell you, David, doesn't this put Ron Keel on the Deep Purple tree now?
Jesus. Yeah, that tree's now an orchard. Yeah.
Yeah. He's on the Deep Purple family tree now.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, enjoyed it today.
Yeah, exactly. He's a great conversation. Y'all are in for a fun episode. A lot of history with Ron. A lot of it is maybe stuff beyond what you already knew. Most of it is, I think, as Jason said, we all learned something today too as well. So great conversation, great new album. It's called KEELWORLD. It came out August 2nd. You can find it now. Yeah, Ron Keel today on the Talk Louder podcast.
You too, guys. Right on, man. Good to see you, David. Jason.
Likewise.
Man, this is awesome.
Good to see you, man. I have to start with a confession. I remember when I saw you on MTV in the 80s when I was a kid, I thought you had the greatest, ballsiest rock and roll voice.
Wow.
And then,
that's how we're going to start.
Yeah. And then,
can I say me too?
And then on top of that, you had killer hair.
I did. Yes, I did. I was quite proud of that while it lasted.
Well, what's
Well-
awesome, Dave, is we know, and Ron, we're not picking on you, we're championing you. He's like 100 feet tall. He's like 100
Oh, I
feet
know.
tall, good hair, kick-ass rock and roll voice. I was like,
The whole
I don't
package.
know. I don't know what else there is to have.
Well, the hair has come a long way, and so has the voice. Thank goodness since then. But I appreciate the compliments, guys.
Oh yeah,
course.
absolutely.
Of course.
I met you at Rockin' Pod with Jason in 2023, and Jason's not lying. You are one tall dude. I was going to ask, was sports ever a career path for you or a consideration, or was it always music?
It was always music, and I I did play some basketball in school, but I was never really good at it. You know, I've kind of gravitated towards anything that I was good at. And the first time I picked up a pair of drumsticks, you know, I kind of sat behind the kit and I was able to cut a groove. You know, it's like it just came naturally to me, I guess, from banging on tables and chairs and everything else in the house for all those years. But singing did not come naturally to me. That took a long time to develop. I was not a naturally talented singer, but I just wanted to sing. I wanted to be heard. And it took a long time, even on those first albums. The Steeler record is, to me, unlistenable. The Right to Rock, it's tough, man. That the guy had a lot of attitude. He had some big balls and, you know, a lot of aggression and power and attitude. But it took me a long time to learn how to control that and channel it into really being able to be the singer that I hear in my head. So I'm glad I'm finally there and still doing what I love to do and doing it. I'm doing what I'm proud of the results and certainly proud of this new album, Keel World.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to cover a lot of ground, but let's start with Keel World. That's your latest news. The album came out August 2nd. 13 songs and 6 or 7 different bands on this album, sort of a retrospect or a career spanning album, but all the songs are brand new from each of those lineups. Is that correct? Tell us
That
about
is correct. It's all new material except for the Black Sabbath cover,
Right.
Children of the Grave. That's an old classic, as we all know.
Yeah.
But all of the other songs from Keel, Steeler, Ron Keel Band, Iron Horse, Ron Keel, Ronnie Lee Keel, those are all new tracks, new songs, new tracks. And I'm really proud of the response that we're getting. You know, Jason, you know this. As you do so many albums throughout, you know, 3, 4, 5 decades now, each album kind of signifies a chapter in your life. And even those 3 Keel albums, the Right to Rock, Final Frontier, and the 87 self-titled album, those were different chapters and the beginning, the middle, and the end, if you will. Keel World is the whole story all in one. It's the story of my life set to music.
Yeah. And so how did you it sounds like it would be a lot of work trying to round up all those lineups to record 1 or 2 new songs, you know, that's a lot of people you're pulling together for this one album. How did that process work?
Well, it was a big team and a lot of great contributions from all the musicians in all the band's projects, session players and producers and engineers and studios all over the country and some in the UK as well that contributed to this to make it what it is. It was going to be a Ron Keel band album when we first started writing songs for, you know, it's that drive to create and write and just express myself that really drives me. And we had a great batch of Ron Keel band songs.
Yeah.
And I went to dinner with a friend of mine, and his dad was sitting across the table from me at the restaurant. And he just looks at me, shakes my hand, and says, "Hey, Ron, what's going on in Keel World?" And I go, "Keel World." And the whole time we're eating dinner, I'm thinking, man, that could be an album title. We could throw a big party and invite all my friends, kind of like we did at Keel Fest in 2019 with Steeler, Ron Keel Band, and Keel all in the same show. We did that again for Rockin' Pod in 23. So I thought, let's put Keel Fest on an album and include all my friends and some of my favorite bands and projects that made me who I am today. So it was complicated, difficult. The hardest part was working long distance as you're having all these different musicians cutting stuff in their home studio or their local studio, sending you files. And then you got to make sure that you keep everything organized, which is a huge task. And then make sure that the guitars are working with the drums. A lot of times the rhythm guitars are really important to me, and they've got to be tight with the drums so that everything else can go on top of that. So there were a lot of complications. It did take 3 years to record, but I think it was worth the wait.
Yeah, yeah. There's our audience will know you, of course, from Steeler and Keel, but a lot of you've spent a lot of years sort of doing this, with the Ron Keel band. It's a rock band, but it's got a lot of Southern rock and some country vibes to it. And then you did the Ronnie Lee Keel. I wanted to ask you, what comes more naturally to you as a singer? We talked about your vocals earlier. As a singer and as a songwriter, do you find rock or country to be easier? Which one's more of a challenge? What is the difference between the two from your perspective?
What I like best and what I think I do best is somewhere in the middle ground. On the Ron Keel band tracks like Hard on the Outside or 5 O'Clock Shadows, where I'm still singing loud and powerfully and aggressively. But to be honest, the screaming my guts out really loud and hard comes a little easier than some of the vocal challenges that come with singing country music, because you don't have to when you're belting out a strong aggressive rock track like Moving Target or the new Steelers song Give Me Guitars or Give Me Death. It's really about capturing that attitude, being powerful, being strong, making sure you're in key and hitting the right notes. But the country stuff is every little move of your head or every adjustment that you make vocally during the course of the session really makes a difference in the song. So you have to, there's nowhere to hide, basically, on those country songs. Whereas with the rock and metal stuff, you got a wall of guitars behind you that somehow give you a little protection anyway.
Sure, yeah. I bet Jason can attest to that.
I feel there's challenges in both, but you're not wrong. Through the early pandemic, I started writing country songs on my own, and you are not wrong at all, because it's a different emotional value you're bringing to a song, like a completely different animal, in my opinion. Because it's not loud. So when there's all of this frequency that's just wide open and there's all this space, if you will, you're every breath and you're basically naked. And it's lighter touch on the drum. The drums are not crash bang. It's real light, if there's any fucking drums at all.
I'm still using some grit. That grit, I think, is one of my favorite parts of my voice and what I bring to even some of the country songs like Neon Circus, which is a rockin' country tune that's on KEELWORLD. Yeah. But you're still singing loud and hard. Even the low stuff is tough for me. And it's really even more difficult during the course of a show. Because in the Ron Keel Band show, we do all this stuff, man. We do the 9 Keel songs are in the Ron Keel Band show. Our original music, we play some Steeler, we play some Black Sabbath. And so we cover all those bases in the course of a Ron Keel Band show. And I'll find myself just breezing along, man. Everything sounds great, feels good. And then it's time to sing one of those songs that's maybe in a lower register. And all of a sudden, I'm not so comfortable anymore. So going back and forth during the course of a show is much more difficult than, you've got, 3 or 4 songs to record in the studio today. So you try and pick the songs that I usually start with one of the country songs, one of the softer tunes. It's something that I'm a little more comfortable with. And once I'm warmed up, then I start belting it out and do some of the heavier music during the course of a day when I'm in the studio. And my goal is to cut 3 songs a day. And we were able to achieve that goal. The vocal on Moving Target, which I'm really proud of. This is the new Keel song. And the first new Keel song in 14 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mark sent me the music, and this really was the impetus musically behind KEELWORLD, because like I said, we had a lot of great songs in the bank for Ron Keel Band. And then when I started thinking this could be more than just a Ron Keel Band album, Mark Ferrari from Keel sent me a piece of music. And I fell in love with it. I thought it was fantastic. He's an amazing songwriter, and he just had this riff in his back pocket. And I put the lyrics and melodies and vocals to that track right here on this microphone, which is not a vintage Neumann U87, man. This is, it's a $400 mic. And I started working on the song just to create a blueprint on this microphone. And I was so pleased with the results that I ended up keeping that first take. I mean, it was magic. And so the vocal that you hear on the new Keel song was just me here in the basement with this mic. I did have the time, and I was in a great studio in Phoenix called Full Well Recording, where we cut 9 of the lead vocal tracks on this record. And I love being in an environment like that where you've got skilled engineers and producers behind the glass, a beautiful vintage microphone, a great vibe, and I can just be myself and sing. I don't have to worry about any of the technical stuff. So I had plenty of time left over, and I thought, well, let's take another shot at this Moving Target song. And I listened to the demo vocal, and I said, well, man, just copy and paste that into the band mix, because the band had re-recorded the entire song by then. And same tempo, same key. So we just took that vocal from the demo, flew it into the track, and I said, man, don't fuck with it. It's perfect. It's magic. It's that first take that you're never going to be able to duplicate that, even with doesn't matter about the microphone or how many times I've practiced or sung the song. That first take was money. So that's what we ended up with.
Well, people should know that that Keel track is basically the classic Keel lineup, right?
It is. Mark Ferrari, Brian J on lead guitar, and they're playing. They've continued to improve their skills throughout the Keel reunion, which we did in 2008 till the present day. And those guys are playing great, swapping solos, all those harmony leads that are a trademark of Keel. And Dwayne Miller on drums, who's been with us 40 years.
Yeah.
And Gino Arce on bass, who's been in the band 15 years now. And Gino's been with me for 26 years. So when he joined Keel, he was an Iron Horse as well. Still is, I guess.
Yeah.
He had been playing those Keel songs on stage with me for 10 years when he joined Keel. So it was very natural to fit Gino into the mix. And so it wouldn't be the same without those guys.
Yeah.
To me, Keel was a band and a brotherhood. And it's not just my last name, it's their band too.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at, because you were talking about how well that song came together. And when you consider that it's basically the classic lineup, it's kind of like riding a bike. You guys just hadn't put the bike down for a while, but you get back together. Yeah. There's the magic, you know?
So the other day I'm in my car and I'm listening to Amazon Music. That's not a plug or anything. And there's, algorithms, right? Everything's controlled by a robot now. So, and, whatever, it's just playing songs. I'll pick some songs and it's playing through them. And all of a sudden, Moving Target comes on.
Mm.
So the robots know me well.
Wow, that's cool. Was that the first time you'd heard it?
Yep.
Wow. Awesome.
I was driving down the highway and Moving Target comes on. I said, that's I know who that is. I know that man. I know that voice. I know what's going on here. And sounded great.
Thank you, man. It really is, in my opinion, one of the top 3 to 5 best Keel songs of all time. And of course, you've got the anthems like The Right to Rock that are timeless and really put us on the map. And there's some great songs on Streets of Rock and Roll, our reunion album from 2010. This one is right up there along with our best. And I try and set that bar pretty high with every project that I do. If we're going to do it, let's do it at least as good or better than we did it before. And so you have a standard that you've achieved that I'm not going to go below that, but it's such a great song. And Ferrari came up with just an amazing piece of classic Keel music, and putting the vocal to it on all of these songs on KEELWORLD as you go into that creative process. Well, I have to write a Steelers song, but what does that sound like or feel like 40 years later?
Yeah.
We all know what a Keel song sounds like, and it's got to have to be a little departure from what I would normally do. Because in the 80s, Jason, you know this as well as anybody, the lyrics, we usually put the lyrics on top of the music. So the guitar players would come up with riffs, or we would write the music, and then it's our job to put words to it. And I don't do that anymore. I usually start with the lyrics, melodies, title, and a couple of strong riffs, and then I'll find the right riff or chord progression to complement the lead vocals and melodies, because that's my country training kicking in, because country music is all built around the voice, the stories, the melodies. But in the 80s, you didn't have to be so eloquent. And I did get a criticism on the video on YouTube where the guy says the lyrics are terrible, you know. But it's just cheese. It's just, for me, it's, I'm a moving target. You'll never catch up with me. I'm just an outlaw with a target on my back. Give me your best shot, and I'll never look back. I mean, it's 80s kind of cheese, very much like Round and Round. I mean, round and round. Our love will find a way. Just give it time. Round and round. What goes around comes around. I mean, that's what we used to do back in the day. So I had to put my head back into the 80s to be authentic enough to create music that really represents Keel and Steeler. That Steeler song, I'm really proud of that one, because if you're going to do your first new Steeler track in 40 years, it's got to be an anthem. It's got to have those elements of the Steeler that inspired us 40 years ago: AC/DC, Judas Priest, Scorpions, whatever. And I found these, just looking through stacks of notebooks, looking for a Steeler title, or what could be a Steeler song in here. And I saw "Give Me Guitars" or "Give Me Death." I thought that's Steeler, man. That's 80s cheese. Oh, it's got Steeler written all over it. So I just went back into my influences, and we even mentioned Yngwie Malmsteen in the lyric. We talk about my guitar heroes, Edward Van Halen, and some of the songs that inspired us: Paranoid, Smoke on the Water when we were kids. So I pay tribute to the genre, the era, and the guitar heroes that really brought that music to life in that new Steeler track. So I'm really proud of that.
So the elephant in the room, did you reach out to Yngwie to be part of this?
No.
Have you had any contact with him over the past? Whatever?
Yeah, we spoke recently. I think it was 85.
Yeah.
Been a while. Okay. All right.
That new song you wrote just a couple days ago, you guys, is called "Cold Day in Hell."
That right? Yeah, exactly.
A couple days ago. Yeah.
It seems like yesterday.
Yeah. See, that just came out. That just came out.
You do have Rick Fox on that track, and we've had Rick on the show, and I think it's great that you guys are together on the Steeler track, first Steeler track in 40 years. But when he was on the show, if I recall correctly, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think I recall correctly, he said that by the time this album came out, the Steeler album, which in my mind is an underground classic, but when that came out, by the time it came out, you guys were already in decline, if not kind of already almost broken up. Is that accurate?
No, I had a different lineup, but we were still selling out every venue in Southern California. We're still one of the top draws on the scene because we always put on a good show.
Yeah, I think that he made that clear. It's like by the time the record came out, you had, I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but you had a new lineup.
Yeah.
By the
time I was the day the record came out, I was the only guy left in the band that was on the album.
That's what he said. That's what he
said.
said.
Uncomfortable doing the meet and greet on release day at Tower Records.
Yeah.
You know, the album came out and we're all autographing, and I'm the only guy behind the table that was actually on the record. So that was a little awkward for the new lineup, which featured Greg Chason on bass.
Yeah.
And Kurt James on guitar, Bobby Marks on drums, who went on to be in Keel. So the band never declined.
Okay.
It got to the point to where I realized, because of the revolving door of players, and it gave us the perception of instability in the industry, we weren't going to get signed to a major label deal. And that was a really tough decision for me because Steeler was my baby. I moved to LA with my band Steeler to make it, and we're on a mission. And that was my band and my brand. And to finally come to my senses and say, man, we've got to move on from this. The last thing I wanted to do was call my new band Keel, but it certainly was the right move at the time. We put Keel together in March of '84. We did our first gig a month later in April of '84. By July, we're in the studio recording our debut album, Late on the Law, for Shrapnel Records. And then by August, literally a month later, before the album's even finished, we were signed to Gold Mountain A&M Records with Gene Simmons producing our debut, The Right to Rock. It all happened within a 6-month span, really quick. And now looking back, obviously it was the right move, but that Steeler legacy is still alive and well with the new track. the new music video, which is going to be, and I hate to call my shot here, but man, this new Steeler video is going to be one of the ultimate big time metal videos of all time. The man behind the camera, the producer and director, is David Pear, who does all the stuff for the Dead Daisies. If you've seen, check out the new Dead Daisies video, We're Gonna Ride. Any of the stuff they've done the last couple of years, David is the man behind the camera. He's a full-time Dead Daisies videographer, creates all their content, all their videos. He's really expensive, but he's really worth it. He's got 2 projects this year, Dead Daisies and Steeler. And we went to Hollywood and did it right. We spent a lot of money and a lot of sweat, muscle, and blood to get this new video created. And we're going to launch that very soon. And a movie that sprung out of that music video project called Steeler Legacy. It's the entire story of the band from day one, with interviews with rock stars and industry execs and interviews with all the guys in the band, telling the story. And the goal was with the documentary film to make it to where it's a fun, entertaining story, even if you've never heard of Steeler, or you don't know who Ron Keel is, or you don't know any of the history. It's one of those stories that tells itself. And we take you back to the Sunset Strip in 1983 in every possible way. And it's going to be, we're going to take it to the film festivals, Amazon Prime. And I'm really excited about that the story can be told. And that was really David's, he said, let's make a movie. And it was his idea. He's a young guy, wasn't even alive in the 80s.
Yeah.
So he hears about the legacy, like we hear about, the Wild West, to these younger people, it was the Wild West on the Sunset Strip in the 80s. So he was enamored with the history and being able to tell that story. So I'm really excited about the movie, the music video, and the single. Of course, the track, Give Me Guitars or Give Me Death, will be released as a single to radio at the same time that the video comes out. So Steeler is still apparently alive and kicking.
Well, I know a lot of people, you mentioned early in this discussion that you can barely listen to your vocals on that record anymore, but I grew up in San Antonio, and Joe Anthony on 99.5 KISS used to play Hot on Your Heels all the time, and I remember me and my friends were just in awe of that, the guitar solo, of course, and your voice. Again, I go back to your voice. Your voice, when we all first heard it, it really cut through. It had that grit and that balls, and it was an amazing combination. So I think that record holds up. I feel like it's something you could be proud of, even though, like any creative type, you look back at some of your early work and you go, wow, I've grown leaps and bounds since then. But I know there's an army of people out there that think that Steeler.
Oh yeah, it's for a lot of people, it's their favorite album of all time. It's their favorite thing I've ever done. I get that. I don't want to tread on their memories or their childhood. That energy that they got from that album. I'm just not happy with the vocals, and I wasn't happy at the time. I did all the lead vocals on the Steeler record. We had a very short schedule and a very tight budget, and I did the vocals. At the time, I was taking voice lessons from Sabine, who was an amazing vocal coach in Southern California. At the time, she was a little teeny Australian lady who could just scream her guts out. She was my teacher. She also coached Michael Sweet from Stryper, Jizzy Pearl, Axl Rose. And I don't think it's any secret that all those guys are still belting it out to this day. We're all still using her training. At the time, I was conflicted with trying to do things her way and wanting to do things my way, not really comfortable in the studio yet. I was really young. And so I was conflicted. I didn't like the results on the original vocal sessions. So I asked Mike Varney, the producer, I said, man, you got to let me recut these. I got to give me one more shot at these vocals. And he said, well, when Yngwie's done with his guitar solos, then whatever time's left, we had 40 hours, I think. And that was it. It was 40 hours. And 30 hours. We had 30 hours to cut the whole record. Whatever time's left, when Yngwie's done, you can have whatever's left to recut whatever vocals you want. And it's the last day of the session. And Yngwie was quick. To his credit, man, he went in and just threw it down. It was his lead guitar solos went very quickly that day. And I'm looking at the clock going, man, I know we're done. At 1:00, your album's finished. Whether it's done or not, you're off the clock. He's not spending an extra $30 to stay here another hour to let me sing. So Yngwie got done at 9:00 that night. Our time is up at 1 a.m. that night. So I had 4 hours to recut the entire record, and I just went boom, 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 take. Didn't listen back to anything. So that for the most part is the result that you hear on that Steeler record. But I am proud of it. I'm proud that it had such an impact on our culture. I'm proud that people love it. And I did have to revisit that when we put Steeler back together in 2019. It was our first show in 35 years for the Keel Fest event in Columbus, Ohio. And I hadn't sung. I did Cold Day in Hell, maybe. Serenade has always been a part of my solo acoustic gig.
Yeah.
But I hadn't touched any of those songs or listened to that record in a long time. But in order to rehearse for the show, I had to go back and revisit it and listen to it and sing along with it a bunch. And I did develop a newfound fondness. I don't say I'm not going to like it, but there's some special moments on there, and it's just amazing that we were there at that time in '83 with an album that became a cornerstone and a foundation of that entire era and genre.
Yeah.
Hey,
absolutely.
what was your first vinyl appearance?
Oh my God, it was even worse than the Steeler album. It was called Homegrown. It was a battle of the bands in Nashville. This is 1980.
Okay, far out.
And we won the battle of the bands. My band Lust.
How old were you?
19.
19. All right.
Yeah.
Cool.
And
guys
another
won-
long story about that.
Did you win studio time or something?
We did. We
Okay.
got.
Yeah.
We were going to be on a compilation album with the other 5 finalists. The
Okay.
5 best bands in Nashville at the time, and the immediately I just joined the band a week before.
Wow.
Literally, they were begging me, "Come on, we need a singer. We got a gig. We need a singer," and I did it just because they wouldn't quit bugging me. And so I did the gig, and it was my first time walking out in a sold out room, nice big club in Nashville. And the audience went nuts with the fists in the air and screaming and response. And that was so electric. It was like a drug, and you get addicted to it very quickly, because I had never experienced an audience reaction quite like that. So we crushed it and took first place in the Battle of the Bands. Next week, you're in the studio recording 2 songs, which ended up being side A and side B, the first tracks on either side of that record. And it became a huge hit on the radio in Nashville, and the vocals were terrible.
What were the names of those songs?
One of the songs was called Speed Demon, which I repurposed that title later on. Not the same song, but the same title.
Yeah.
And the other was called Hooker. And it was just, I learned, I vowed right then and there that, I was going to learn how to sing one, come hell or high water. They were going to kick me out of the band. The vocals were so terrible. And I turned on the radio, get in my car to go to work, and I turn on the radio, and there it is, man. I can't get away from it. And it was really, really bad. I mean, I was totally green, uncomfortable, and I had a long way to go. I'm glad I finally got there. It took me a long time, but that was my first vinyl appearance. And
Wow.
Well, it couldn't have been that fucking bad because.
Oh no, it's bad.
Well, hold on. Let me interrupt you, because it couldn't have been that bad because it was on the radio. You said.
Yeah, it was a big hit on national radio.
Whoever was produced. I mean, you won the Battle of the Bands. Whoever was pressing record in the studio didn't press stop in the middle of your first take and go, "Hey, what the fuck is this guy doing?" Oh,
yeah, they did.
Shit.
Yes, they did.
Well,
it was a rough night, man.
Was Steeler on one of the early Metal Massacres?
Steeler was the lead track on Metal Massacre
that's what
1,
I thought.
which was a huge break for us.
Yeah, that's
the
what I
first
thought.
recorded appearance of Metallica, Rat, Steeler, and so many others.
I'm a proud owner of an early pressing of that. But what song is on there?
Cold Day in Hell.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
We had released that as a 45 single, and Brian Slagle really put us on the map with that.
Yeah.
At that time, KLOS and KMET in Los Angeles were starting to play. They had a local music show on KLOS. Joe Benson played us on the radio, and that combination of getting the airplay in Southern California and being on the Metal Massacre album, which is legendary now,
course.
as you mentioned. That was a huge break for us. And
Was
I'll
it the
always
same?
be forever
Was it
grateful.
the same recording that's on the Steeler album?
No,
Different recording.
much better vocal on the single.
Same lineup.
No, different lineup.
Oh,
Totally different
okay,
lineup.
okay.
All different
Wow.
guys. The
Wow.
original band on the single was the original band, and on the Metal Massacre, that's the original Steeler lineup, which was magic. You know, it was a band of brothers that all moved to Hollywood together to follow that dream. And
Right.
as I said, we're on a mission. And my biggest regret was not being mature enough or a good enough band leader at the time to hold it together, because there was a lot of magic there.
So one of the songs you mentioned on Keel World is the Black Sabbath cover, "Children of the Grave," and you auditioned for Black Sabbath and even went in the studio and did a little bit of demos or whatever. But first of all, tell me why that choice of cover, why that Black Sabbath song. I want to know why that song is special to you, and then if you don't mind, share a little bit about spending time with Tony Iommi and Geezer Butler.
A few years ago, I was approached by the world's ultimate Black Sabbath fan. His name's Mike Sullivan, Mad Mike, we call him, guy from the UK. And he's the executive producer of a project called Emerald Sabbath, which is how the song is credited on Keel World, to Emerald Sabbath.
Right.
He assembled a group of Sabbath alumni, all ex-members and members of the Sabbath family tree, like Rudy Sarzo on bass, Vinny Appice on drums. And he invited me to sing. First, it was just one song, Trashed, the Ian Gillan track off Born Again.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that session. It went great. And he said, I've got a couple more for you. So I ended up singing 3 tracks on that initial Emerald Sabbath release. Die Young, covering Ronnie James Dio from Sabbath, with Vinny Appice on the drum kit, the guy who did the original Heaven and Hell album, of course.
Wow.
And Rudy Sarzo on bass, my guitar player from Ron Keel band, Dave Cawthorn, on guitar.
I think
So I did Die Young.
Vinny was on Mob Rules. Bill Ward was on Heaven and Hell.
Correct. There you go. Vinny joined in time to do the tour, but Bill Ward, I
That's
believe.
right.
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah.
That's
Vinny's on Mob Rules.
So my
and-
whole story is shot to hell then.
No, it's not shot to hell at all. No, it's not. No,
Well,
you're
it's
making.
Vinny
you're-
Appice. He's back,
Yeah.
so you've
He's
got
the-
these ex-Sabbath members.
Yes, sir.
Several other members of Sabbath. Bev Bevan, who was in the band when I was in the band.
Yeah.
And I was in the band, set the record straight there. I still have a
Okay.
signed contract, and I was never fired from Sabbath. So technically, I'm still in the
You're
band.
still in
Wow.
Black Sabbath. Far out.
But so Mike's putting the Sabbath tribute project together, and it turned out great. I'm really, really proud of the vocals, covering Dio, Gillan, and Ozzy on Hole in the Sky. So
Oh,
I got to
good
cover
one.
all
Yeah.
3 iconic Sabbath vocalists on that record. And so a couple of years ago, he says, we want to do Volume 2. We're going to do Emerald Sabbath Volume 2, and I want you to sing Children of the Grave. I said, man, that'd be awesome. I would love to. At this time, I'll do it for free, because he paid me really well for that initial session. I got paid quite handsomely for those 3 songs. I said, I'll do this one for free if you let me put it on Keel World, on my new album. And he was really cool and allowed me to do that. We've got Bobby Rondinelli on drums,
Yes.
who obviously was a member of Sabbath and Rainbow and fantastic talent, great guy. And Neil Murray on bass, who
Wow.
toured with Sabbath and was also, of course, a member of Whitesnake. So
Right.
you've got some heavy hitters on that track, Children of the Grave, with me and my guitar player, Dave Cawthorn, again from Ron Keel Band, doing the solo, and Mike Dresch, my co-producer, doing all the rhythm guitars on that. So it's an honor to pay tribute to the legacy that is, in my opinion, the founding fathers of heavy metal,
Yeah.
and not just to be a very small thread in that tapestry that is Sabbath.
So does that Emerald Sabbath album exist? Is that
It
is that out
does.
there somewhere?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, it's called
Wow.
Ninth Star, emeraldsabbath.com.
Wow. Wow.
Cool.
Wow. Well, we started this conversation about me talking about seeing you on MTV, and another guy that I saw on MTV that I thought was just the coolest dude was Bobby Rondinelli. He's in that.
I thought you were going to
window.
say Jason McMaster.
Oh, he came much later.
he's over this shit.
Yeah, I'm
He's
over that guy.
He's
Yeah.
over this crap.
Rondinelli,
man.
yeah, he's a monster, man.
Yeah, because he's in that Rainbow video, Stone Cold, and and there's a bit where he twirls the stick, and he's just got that big fluffy hair, and he just looks like a powerhouse drummer. He just looked totally cool.
Yeah, it's
So,
a
yeah,
treat to get to work with him.
Yeah, I bet.
I'm pretty
I
sure
bet.
he played on the original Emerald Sabbath sessions. I think he did was it Hole in the Sky? I'm not sure who. It was an all-star cast of ex-Sabbath members and Ozzy players and so forth. So I'm really proud to just be lumped into that all-star lineup
Oh,
and
yeah.
Well,
able to finally sing those songs. This is what, 40 years later maybe, but this is what I would have done had I actually gotten the gig or kept the gig.
So why did that dissolve? What happened there?
Spencer Proffer had signed on to produce the next Sabbath record. Spencer had produced Quiet Riot's Metal Health.
Yeah.
So he was the hot hand in town. He put metal on the charts.
Sure.
Spencer was the guy.
Right.
And so he had signed on to produce the new Sabbath record. And he's the one who got me the gig.
So the new Sabbath album would have been after Born Again.
That's correct.
Okay.
He got me the gig in Sabbath, and we started meeting. Tony and Geezer and I would meet daily and try and plot out some stuff. We weren't working on any new material. Tony gave me a song list, said, this is what we're doing on tour, learn this. And I met with their management, and we did the contract and all that stuff. But Spencer was trying to turn Black Sabbath into an 80s hair metal band. He wanted it to do outside material. He had songwriters writing songs for Sabbath, wanted to turn them into an MTV 80s hair band. And Sabbath wasn't having any of that. Tony and Geezer weren't going to bite, and they fired Spencer. I got caught in the crossfire, and that's how I ended up being in a band called Keel.
Wow. Well, in Keel, you got to work with, you mentioned earlier, Gene Simmons produced not one, but two of your records, which is pretty incredible. And at that time, Gene and Paul were kind of out, trying to produce the next big band, or, they were out in Hollywood and kind of making the rounds and trying their hand at producing. Now, a lot of people would say that maybe this is just a couple rich guys trying to dabble in production, but obviously they're from a successful band. So as a producer, was Gene a real technical, hands-on kind of guy, or was he more of a guru spiritual vibe guy that was just a good spirit to be around in the studio?
He was the coach of the team. When you're producing an album or directing a movie or whatever, you're the coach. You might not necessarily be the guy behind the camera, but you are overseeing the entire process from every kick beat. And Gene taught me so much during the course of our years of working together, how the kick drum works with the right hand of the bass guitar and how those patterns have to match and mesh, how to craft great songs, how to layer guitars and vocals and capture the attitude in the studio. He taught me so many lessons that I could go on and on. But one of those lessons was a real strict preparation, to where, like I said, he had every kick pattern mapped out. Everything was, the game plan was set in place.
Right.
But don't be afraid to go off script and experiment or try something. If it doesn't work, you'll know it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. So he had that great combination of real solid, strict preparation before you hit the studio, but also being reckless and throwing that game plan out the door and experimenting and trying new stuff and really even changing song arrangements on the spot in the studio. I hear a bridge here, and let's put a bridge in the middle of this song or whatever that we hadn't rehearsed or prepared for. I still carry that same philosophy with me into every session I do. I've got to be totally prepared, and I've got to be totally unafraid to experiment or try new stuff when I hit the studio. So just one of the many lessons I learned from Gene. He's always the little demon on my shoulder in every recording session.
I love it. I love it. I wanted to go back real quick to KEELWORLD. I think I've only been listening to it for a couple days because I've only had it in my hands a couple days, or on my computer rather. But the two tracks that I keep coming back to is the Iron Horse track, Guitar in, what is it?
Guitar in the
Grave. I love that. And the Taking Me Back song, which is Ron Keel band.
Cool.
Tell me a bit about, let's spend some time on Iron Horse, because I don't think people maybe don't know that one as much as maybe the Ron Keel band stuff.
Yeah, well, the Iron Horse, thank you. I appreciate that. That's certainly a special song for us. And for 7 years, from 2000 to 2007, the Iron Horse fans didn't know who Keel was either, because unless we played Right to Rock in the show and you've got 25-year-old kids with their fists in the air, Iron Horse had a whole different fan base and it was my vehicle for 7 years. We released two great albums in 2001 and 2004. toured the country, coast to coast, countless times, thousands of gigs, a lot of great memories, and a lot of fans that fell in love with me and my music during that period. A lot of those Iron Horse fans became Keel fans because of that band. It was the bridge between my country years and the metal cowboy who I am today. Iron Horse was hillbilly heavy metal, rock and roll soul. It was just hard rock and southern country metal. Very much like Ron Keel Band with a different name. We were not afraid to play any of the Keel material. We played Saber Tiger. We played Black Sabbath. We played all the stuff from my entire career and released 2 great original albums, a lot of great memories. And once I had a Keel track, Moving Target, once I had Give Me Guitars or Give Me Death, I had some Ronnie Lee Keel songs. I knew I wanted to do a couple of solo tracks. I knew I wanted the Sabbath track. I think we've got to have an Iron Horse track on this record. It's 7 years of my life when I was in my prime, and a project that is very well loved and liked by my hardcore fan base. So looking for the right song. If you only get one song, kind of like the Steelers song, you only get one Steelers song on the record. What's it going to be? It's got to be something that really captures the vibe and the attitude and the sound of that project. And it's Guitar in the Grave is one of those songs that really, the best way I can tell you this is that Gino Arce, my bass player, who's been with me 26 years, he played on 3 different projects on this record. He's in Keel, he's in Ron Keel Band, and he's in Iron Horse. So I sent Gino the record when it came out last week. And last weekend, he's listening to it with his family. And he's got the CD on the player, and they're all at the pool and just listening to the new album with his kids. And his daughters grew up in the Iron Horse era in 2005. And, they were teenagers then.
Yeah.
And they grew up listening to it. So they're listening to the album. And he's not telling them, that's Steeler. Oh, this is Ron Keel. Oh, this is Ron Keel. He's not telling them which band is on which track.
Right.
And he's playing the record, top to bottom for his kids. And his daughter goes, that's Iron Horse. And she knew. She knew when she heard the track. That's Iron Horse. There's something special about the song and the men who played it. And I knew when I knew this is the song for Iron Horse.
Yeah.
And the guys did an amazing job on the session.
It's a standout track for me. I really enjoyed that one.
It means a lot.
And Taking Me Back, if there's any justice in the world, that should be all over the radio.
Wow, cool. And
Absolutely.
That's one of the first responses that I got to that. I wasn't sure how people would respond to that, or really, for that matter, any of the Ron Keel Band songs, because that's my baby. Those are my songs. That's my baby. That I was so close to it during the process of writing and recording. I knew I loved it. I love these songs. And I'm going to finish them. I'm going to release them, and we'll see. Let the chips fall where they may.
Yeah.
And so I had no idea about 5 O'Clock Shadows or Taking Me Back. That's why Taking Me Back is a deep cut, so to speak. It's not like not in a position of prominence in the sequence.
Right.
So to hear that compliment to there that you just gave me on that song really means a lot, because it's a very special tune to me. It's real. It tells a story, and I think at the core of that message lyrically, that's the common thread that binds us all together this day and age. We all want to go back, man. We all want to go back to our old neighborhood. We all want to go back to our hot high school girlfriend. Hopefully she's still as hot now as she was then. And then you want to go back on stage and share this feeling with the first verse is about my old hometown. Second verse is about my old ex-girlfriend. The third verse is about the audience, because I'll always continue to fight to get back on that stage and back in front of the people that matter.
I think that's why it resonates with me. It's that timeless, universal theme, and you just said it right there. You said it all right there.
Thank you.
You can't relate to that, I loved it, because when I hear a song like that, when it's done well, it makes me go back through my memory lane, So I'm not Ron Keel, but I've had those similar experiences. So Ron Keel's song puts me on that path back to my past.
Right on.
And it's a lot of good memories. And as you said, it's just a timeless, universal theme.
So that seems to be amen to that. That seems to be quite a different lyrical approach than how you described Moving Target.
Very different.
I don't want to say cheese. You use the word cheese, 80s metal cheese, whatever. I get that. I'm all about that. But at the same time, the way that, I don't know, Springsteen or even Dylan or, someone who's a storyteller, Willie Nelson, Cash, all the greats who were storytellers. I don't even know if those guys are all, I would even consider, it's like folk music. It's like lyrically you're going through these memories and you're writing this story of a time. And I think that when you grab an audience or when you grab someone's ears, right? I feel like that is the complete opposite from what you're talking about. Oh, I'm a moving target. I got a target on my back, and it's different than rattling off this screamy, hard rocking metal when you're telling a story. It's not, you don't have time for that.
Yeah, there's some cheese though, and Taking Me Back. There's cheese all over this record, man. It's maybe got different flavors of cheese, but Taking Me Back is the same way. It's not Shakespeare or whatever. It's
yeah, sure. I don't mean
taking me back to where I want to be. You're the reason that I believe.
I don't mean to get so romantic, but
well,
the point I think that you get it by way of that's why it hit David, I'm sure.
That's just a universal theme. There's a great song that Eddie Money did in the 80s called I Want to Go Back, and it's the same thing.
Oh, cool.
The videos, him walking through his old high school. I mean, it's just something we're all, and you can call it cheesy if you want to, but we can all relate to it. So
I'm a cheesy dude, man. I got no problem with it.
Me neither. I recently wrote a song called Punks in the Street, and it's exactly about what you're talking about, Ron. It's exactly about, I only visit this town in the holidays. It's my hometown. I'm going back for what family is left here to I turned down my old street and this shit is not the same anymore. I just wish it was. So it's that whole thing. And goddamn, we used to rip this neighborhood apart. Me and my friends set this place on fire.
And now your back hurts.
Right.
Well, that song that you're mentioning, David, Taking Me Back, I actually cut that in my old hometown in Phoenix, Arizona. I cut the vocals and guitars at Fullwell Recording there. And to get to the studio from where I was staying, or every morning I would go to the gym and I would drive by my old high school and I would see the Coliseum. You go outside to have a smoke at the studio and there's the Coliseum right behind the studio. This is Veterans Memorial Coliseum, where I would wait in line all night long to buy a $7 ticket to see Ted Nugent, where I went to all my childhood concerts, and then eventually ended up finally getting a gig there on tour with Motley Crue. Wow. And back in the day, I would go fight my way to the front row, and I'd be right in front of the barricade because I was big and tall. I'd turn around, and I'd just watch the audience, pretend I was on stage. So to get back to that venue, and it was a big hometown homecoming gig. Sure. My mom and dad were there, my sister, all the ex-girlfriends, all the ex-bandmates. I mean, they're all out there. We're opening for Motley Crue. It's sold out. And I'm finally on that stage again. So every day, even that day of that session, when I cut that song, I was literally walking the streets of my old hometown.
It makes it legit,
awesome.
Man.
That's awesome. All right, one more quick question and we'll let you go. I know we promised we'd let you go at a reasonable time. I have to ask you, you mentioned Mark Ferrari earlier, and he brought that great piece of music to the KEELWORLD album. There's a Pantera connection between Mark and you and Pantera's power metal album.
Yeah, we love those guys, man. We made friends with them when they sent us a cassette tape. I still have it, literally 10 feet away from me right now. Pantera sent us a cassette tape when they were a cover band. And they were covering Keel's Back to the City. Oh. And so they sent us the cassette, and I actually still have it. So we became friends with them through that process. Every time we'd go through Dallas, they'd meet us at the gig, and then we'd go to the strip clubs. They always knew how to throw a party. And so we became friends with them through that process. And we had cut a demo of Proud to Be Loud for the 87 album. It didn't make the cut, but Pantera picked it up and the rest is history.
Yeah, yeah. Amazing little footnote there. That's incredible. Ron, thank you so much. We won't keep you any longer. We wish you all the success in the world moving forward. KEELWORLD is a great snapshot of your career. And what I love about it is it's not a greatest hits from the past. It's all those entities coming together and offering new songs. So congratulations for 3 years of hard work and pulling all those people together and putting that album together. I know you're probably really proud of it because it does sort of capture your entire career up to this point. So
I am, and I really appreciate the opportunity and the invitation to come on and talk about it with you guys, your viewers, your listeners. I know we've been trying to put this together for a while, so thanks for your patience, because now we got something to talk about.
Exactly.
So, thanks again, guys.
The time was perfect. Yeah, we appreciate you, Ron. Thanks so much. On behalf of my co-host, Jace McMaster, I'm Metal Dave, along with our special guest today, Ron Keel, on the Talk Louder podcast.